Before we begin this amazing story, I want to hear from you. Tell me down in the comments where you're watching from, whether it's the busy streets of New York, the wide skies of Dallas, or the golden coast of Los Angeles. I love seeing how far these Wild West tales travel. It makes every story feel like it's shared around one big fire. The prairie remembers silence. For 11 long years, Jonas Calder lived inside it. Just the sigh of wind pressing against his ranch boards, the steady low breath of his cattle, and the tall grass whispering like ghosts who never quite left. He moved through his days like a shadow, speaking so few words that the townfolk gave him names. The hollow rancher, the quiet man out west. Once, in his youth, he had known laughter, warmth, and trust, but those things had been buried with time and loss. Jonas rose with dawn, worked until the stars, and returned each night to a cabin stripped of softness. His table bore one plate, his bed one blanket, his fire one chair. He spoke to no one but his animals, and even then sparingly. Loneliness had carved him into something rigid, but safe. It was a May evening when the silence cracked. The sky bled with orange and violet as he came back from the field, boots dusted white by the trail. At first, he thought it was the wind at his door. But when the thud came again, softer, desperate, he set down his tools and reached for his rifle. On the porch lay a woman. She could not have been more than 30, though sorrow had pressed years upon her face. Her dress was torn, dirt clung to her hair, and her arms were patterned with bruises that looked like cruel fingerprints. Her breath hitched as she tried to rise, but her body gave out, folding into the wood as though the house itself had caught her. Jonas stood there a moment, rifle half raised out of habit. He had kept people away for more than a decade. Yet something in her stillness, in the raw courage it took to make it this far, moved him. Slowly, he lowered the weapon, stepped forward, and lifted her inside. The cabin that had been barren for years flickered alive with small, unfamiliar sounds. The pop of firewood as he coaxed flames to life, the soft rattle of a teacup against her trembling hands, the rustle of blankets pulled over weary shoulders. She said little, her voice hoarse, but when she managed it, her name fell into the quiet. Evelyn Marlowe, a widow. The word dropped heavy between them. Jonas asked no questions. He had long ago learned that pain reveals itself in its own time. Instead, he gave her silence, and in that silence she rested. By morning, the town already knew. Clara Dunn spotted Evelyn at the well, sleeves tugged down to hide her bruises. She saw Jonas beside her, carrying a bucket, though he had never carried one for anyone else. And by noon, tongues wagged louder than church bells. Asterisk, who was she? Why his house? What shameful thing was he hiding? Asterisk. That evening Jonas rode into town for supplies. The saloon buzzed with the heat of gossip. Sheriff Amos Grady, tired-eyed and wary, leaned against the bar beside him. "You keeping her up there?" the sheriff asked, quiet but sharp. Jonas didn't look up from his drink. "She's got nowhere else." "You certain she ain't trouble?" Jonas's jaw tightened, gray eyes lifting like storm clouds. Trouble's already been to her. When he returned home, dusk painted the sky. Evelyn stood at the doorway, as if uncertain she belonged there, fingers clutched tight at her sides. "I can leave," she whispered. "I won't bring shame on you." Jonas said nothing for a long while, his silence heavy as stone. At last he spoke, his voice low, rough with years of disuse. "Stay. A roof don't mean much, unless it shelters someone." But even as he said it, lanterns appeared on the ridge, town folk creeping closer, shadows spilling across his fence line. Their whispers carried, sharp as knives. Evelyn shrank back into the doorframe, trembling. Jonas stepped forward, shoulders squared, eyes unblinking, the kind of silence that warned wolves to keep their distance. For 11 years, Jonas Calder had chosen solitude. But that night, as the murmurs of suspicion thickened around his ranch, he made a choice that broke it. He stood firm, not with a rifle nor a raised voice, but with a presence that told the town, and the widow behind him, that she would not be cast aside again. The hollow rancher had let someone inside, and from that quiet defiance, a storm began to gather. The days that followed grew into a fragile rhythm, like a song played soft on old strings. Jonas rose with the dawn, his boots echoing across the porch, while Evelyn tended the fire with hands that still trembled when shadows moved too quickly. She did not speak much, and neither did he. But in those silences something unspoken bloomed, like wildflowers pushing up through stone after a long winter. She sewed buttons back on his shirts, clumsy at first, then steadier. He began leaving her the larger cut of bread at supper, without a word. At night, when the wind scraped against the shutters, Jonas would stay by the fire a little longer, so the room would not feel so empty when she tried to sleep. Small mercies, barely noticed, but together they stitched a life. The town did not take kindly to it. Clara Dunn's tongue sharpened with each passing day. Asterisk, the widow hides a past. The rancher's gone soft. She'll ruin him. Asterisk, the words spread like dry brush catching flame, so that every time Evelyn dared step into town, she felt eyes pressing on her bruises as if they had the right to read her shame. Jonas walked beside her then, quiet but solid, a wall against the murmurs. Still, the past found ways to reach her. One morning the sheriff rode up, a folded paper in his hand, his expression heavy. Evelyn's late husband, Tom Fletcher, had kin in another county. They were stirring claims that she had no right to start again, that debts tied to his name were debts tied to hers. The paper was heavy with words meant to chain her down. That night, by the low glow of lamplight, Evelyn pressed her hands flat to the table, her voice raw. "I should leave. I can't be the reason they strip your land too." Jonas set down his cup, steady as a man who had already made peace with what mattered. "You think I've been living 11 years just to keep dirt under my boots?" He met her eyes, the fire flickering across his weathered face. "No, I've been waiting for something worth standing for." The next day, the saloon brimmed with townsfolk. The sheriff held the papers. Clara Dunn whispered to the back, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Evelyn stood there, small in her plain dress, shoulders drawn tight, as though bracing for another blow. Every gaze was a stone thrown at her. But before she could speak, Jonas stepped forward. His boots rang heavy against the wooden floor, his frame filling the space like a storm. "She ain't a burden," he said, his voice carrying across the room like thunder rolling down from the hills. "She's a survivor. And if this town can't stomach giving a woman peace after all she's endured, then it's the town that's shameful, not her." The words hung there, thick and undeniable. Silence spread, the kind that makes a man's heart pound. Sheriff Amos, tired of Clara's venom and certain of the truth written on Evelyn's bruises, folded the paper without a word. He declared her free, of claim, of debt, of shadow. And in that moment, the weight shifted. Evelyn's eyes glistened, tears welling not from sorrow, but from a light breaking through the cracks of her fear. Jonas looked at her, not with possession, but with a quiet recognition, as though both of them had finally found the thing they had been missing all along. From then on, the ranch no longer echoed hollow. 2 cups clinked instead of 1. 2 sets of footsteps crossed the porch. There was laughter, shy and uncertain at first, but laughter all the same. The town still whispered, but whispers fade like smoke and wind. What endures are the gentle acts, a hand steadying a pail, a meal shared, a silence no longer empty but full. And if you, listener, carry a hollow space within you, remember this: solitude can harden a soul, and sorrow can bruise it deep, but neither is the end. Sometimes life brings to your porch a broken traveler, someone who needs shelter, and sometimes, by giving it, you find yourself sheltered too. For even after 11 years of silence, even after shame and hurt, life can bloom again, like wildflowers after fire.